their actions setting up this glaring conflict of interest with Hunter Biden, his business partner, on the board of a thoroughly corrupt oil company owned by a thoroughly corrupt, odious oligarch.
Burisma paid Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, $1 million a year, while Hunter Biden threatened Ukraine to withhold $1 billion in aid unless and until they fired the prosecutor investigating his son.
That may be one. I mean, the son didn't have a job. He had some big difficulties, and then all of a sudden he's making millions of dollars as soon as his father becomes vice president.
If your last name wasn't Biden, do you think you would have been asked to be on the board of Burisma?
I don't know. Probably not. I don't think that there's a lot of things that would have happened in my life that if my last name wasn't Biden.
Hunter Biden received millions of dollars from Russia and the Ukraine and $1.5 billion from China. Why? What did Hunter do with the money, and what did our adversaries get in return for making such huge payments to the Bidens? Joe Biden has refused to answer questions on the topic, leaving troves of questions unanswered. A Senate report determines that Hunter Biden likely paid Russian and Ukrainian women for sex, contributing to possible sex trafficking. He laundered money from China and the Ukraine using a shell corporation he started with a friend of his, Devon Archer. The latest revelation reveals that Archer arranged meetings with Hunter and Joe Biden to meet with Ukrainian business owners in exchange for millions of dollars. Joe Biden then used his power as the vice president of the United States to get the Ukrainian prosecutor general fired. Biden had him fired because he was investigating Burisma Oil for possible corruption, the same company Hunter Biden was receiving millions from. There's a treasure trove of dirty deals and corruption, yet the D.C. establishment doesn't seem incentivized to prosecute. Chris Farrell is the director of investigations at Judicial Watch. With decades of experience in investigations, I sit down with him to understand what's happening in the investigation, what needs to happen, and why is this information so crucial. Sir, thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be with you.
Joe Biden has refused to address the issue of Hunter Biden and swears Hunter did nothing wrong. Here are two clips of Biden's response when asked about Hunter.
My son did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I carried out the policy of the United States government in rooting out corruption in Ukraine. And that's what we should be focusing on. And what I wanted to make a point about, and my son's statement speaks for itself. He spoke about it today. My son's statement speaks for itself. What I think is important is we focus on why it's so important to remove this man from office.
What's your role as vice president in charge of policy in Ukraine, in your son's job in Ukraine? How is that not a conflict of interest?
It's not a conflict of interest. There's been no indication of any conflict of interest from Ukraine or anywhere else. Period. I'm not going to respond to that. Let's focus on the problem. Focus on this man, what he's doing, that no president has ever done. No president.
So if Hunter didn't do anything wrong, why doesn't he just answer the question and say what happened?
He can't. I mean, he is incapable of answering the basic interrogatives, right? The who, what, when, where, how, and why of his son and his involvement in the Ukraine. And he's not even willing to engage in the topic. So the first question is kind of rolled out by a reporter, and he rebuffs it with a categorical denial, or he says something like, my son's statement speaks for itself. Well, what does that even mean? In fact, in the interview that ABC did with Hunter Biden, he contradicts himself in that interview. So if that speaks for itself, where do we go with this? Look, Joe Biden cannot address the facts of his son's extraordinary business relationships in Ukraine, and he certainly can't explain the shakedown that he did to compel the firing of the prosecutor and the withholding of $1 billion in aid that he bragged about. I mean, he's on the record on video bragging about this.
Yeah, we do have that. I'll show that to you in a second. But so is this an election thing? Is this a CYA type situation where he just doesn't want to get caught? You know, I have my own theories, and others have opined that the whole reason he's running for president is to cover up a lot of what happened under the last administration. So why specifically is he not addressing these questions?
The nastiest, dirtiest part of it is there is real criminal exposure for both his son and arguably for former Vice President Biden, because he was leveraging his official position for personal benefit. He essentially took the full weight and power of the United States government in his position as Vice President and leveraged $1.5 billion in aid to have an official fired. This is a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act issue. To have a foreign official fired for investigating his son's criminal activity. This is the definition of corruption.
So do you think he's hoping to just get through the election? Do you think he's hoping that there, in some way, he can bury this so that even if Trump were to win, he couldn't get prosecuted? What is his endgame? What is his goal?
Right. So if he wins, it vanishes because he'll bury it. If he loses, the defense will be, we've already been over this road. In fact, they're trying that now. We've already discussed this. We've already looked at this. There's nothing to it. It's already been talked about. It's not been talked about. It's not been investigated. It has not been uncovered. There's tons of reporting that your colleague, Chanel Rion, has done, yep, which exposes what was going on in Ukraine. That has not reached a broad sort of segment of the American media or the American population, and they need to know about it.
Well, I'm looking forward to diving into the issues with you and the documents that we have and that we're looking for. When we come back from the break, we will dive into Hunter Biden's dealings with Ukraine, Russia, and China, and the DOJ's response. We'll be right back.
You and your father ever discuss Ukraine?
No. As I said, the only time was after a news account, and it wasn't a discussion in any way. There's no but to this. No, we never did.
So apparently, Vice President Biden had no idea, even though he's in charge of the Ukraine, he had no idea that his son was also on the board of a company and working deals with the Ukraine. What do you think?
It's a preposterous, bald-faced lie. I mean, there's no way. If you just watch that clip, Amy Robach asked this question. He says, no. And then he begins to describe how it did occur. And then he says, but. And then he stops and says, oh, there's no but. You got 3 or 4 different answers in the time frame of what, 10
well,
and 10
he had to have known. It's ridiculous to think that his father didn't know. And if we can put that picture up, we've got around the same time frame. They're all golfing together. What is this?
Right, and so this is a photograph that, this is 2014. It's the vice president, with his business partner, with the business partner of Hunter.
Devin Archer, who was also on the board at Burisma.
Also a Burisma partner, and also involved in the China deal as well. And the notion that all these guys would get together and hanging out and not a word, not a syllable is spoken concerning any of their business interests.
Totally separate. Totally separate.
It's preposterous.
But the timeline is also interesting because now we have the emails and other documents that have come out that show that shortly after either Hunter or Devin met with Joe Biden, then Joe Biden goes to the Ukraine or has a phone call with someone on the Ukraine and something happens in the Ukraine, like the prosecutor general getting fired or the timeline, especially with the emails that have been released recently, the timeline is a little bit odd. What are your thoughts?
I want to just go back to the foundational point of a father and son and their personal relationship and their conversations about what they're doing or not doing. This is a father. I'm sure that he loves his son. I think Joe Biden is probably a concerned, loving, good dad who cares about his son. I think that also Hunter Biden has had a very business matters would be part and parcel of that. And then there's the other issue, and this is sort of a governmental cost issue. As we know, Hunter Biden made 411 trips with Secret Service protection, 26 trips to foreign countries, 5 of those to China alone. And so all this transpired, there's all this essentially official travel, and his dad doesn't know what he's doing or where he's going or who he's talking to or what he's involved in.
He was on the plane with him in many instances.
It is preposterous that there would be zero knowledge, zero discussion or contact.
So let's get into what Hunter actually did. So he's on the board of Burisma, which is a natural gas company in the Ukraine. He was on the board of directors despite the fact that he had no background or no experience in natural gas or oil. And he's making, according to the Senate report, he's making $50,000 a month.
Zero qualifications. Zero.
Yeah.
His qualification for being on the board of Burisma was he was the son of the vice president of the United States. That's his qualification.
They're paying for access.
Correct. This is a pay-to-play operation from beginning to end.
Right.
And with quite a hefty paycheck assigned to it.
And he did get them access to Vice President Biden, who ended up making policy decisions based on what was best for Burisma, because ultimately the prosecutor general in the Ukraine was looking to investigate and prosecute potentially Burisma for corruption. And so Joe Biden stepped in and said, no, you need to drop those charges, or drop the investigation. They didn't want to drop the investigation, so he ended up getting that prosecutor general terminated.
Correct.
Because he didn't want him looking into his son or his son's company. Effectively, Burisma paid off the vice president through his son
Correct.
to drop an investigation into corruption. Here's a clip of Joe Biden bragging about his involvement with getting the prosecutor fired.
I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, what, 6 hours? I said, we're leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Every once in a while, Joe Biden commits the truth.
On accident?
He's very full of himself. He loves to play the tough guy. He loves to, you know, it's as though he's, you know, acting out a movie script or something. And so he wants to impress people, and I'll take him at his word. I think he did exactly what he said he did, and he did it in such a way that directly benefited his son and insulated them from any further legal exposure or investigation.
Even after the Ukraine said that they did not think their prosecutor general was corrupt, they didn't think he'd done anything wrong, but they fired him anyway because Joe Biden paid $1 billion for it. When we come back from the break, we will discuss Hunter's payment from the mayor of Moscow's wife, payments from China, and the DOJ's response. We will be right back. This weekend on Weekly Briefing, we discuss the state of Georgia and the impeachment with Georgia State Senator Burt Jones. Our panel of experts discuss the Democrats' push for impeachment, censoring conservative voices, and the left's hypocrisy. We take on lies spread by members of Congress and the media, and don't be fooled. Join me, Christina Bobb, for Weekly Briefing, Saturday and Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern and 11 a.m. Pacific.
Miss Tipping Point on One America News at its all-new time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Kara McKinney brings a fresh perspective to the news of the day, with commentary and analysis from leading experts on the stories that matter most to you. Tune in weeknights for all new episodes of Tipping Point with Kara McKinney at a brand new time, 9 p.m.
We have had enough information to indict Hunter Biden for at least a year or more, and we continue to uncover more and more information as time goes on. Here's the White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, talking specifically about the Senate report about Hunter Biden.
That was a very troubling report. You know, I'll leave it to the DOJ as to how they move forward. But I mean, I think this New York Post cover says it all. You know, I heard so much about Russia collusion, but it appears the only collusion going on was between Hunter Biden as he accepted $3.5 million from the wife of the Moscow mayor. Very troubling indeed. And in addition to that, Ukraine money as well.
So Hunter Biden's taking money from the mayor of Moscow's wife to the tune of $3.5 million. He also is getting paid from the Ukraine. What is Hunter doing?
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to the very first element there. Why is the mayor of Moscow's, or the wife of the mayor of Moscow, why is she sending him that much money?
And Biden hasn't answered that question. We were talking about this earlier in the segment, but he refuses to explain why. Why did Moscow pay your son $3.5 million, but yet, as we saw earlier, he just wants to point to Trump and say, but Trump is colluding with Russia.
And why aren't there television satellite trucks parked outside Hunter Biden's house? Answer the question, Hunter. Why did you get this money from the mayor's wife? Just explain it.
Based on your analysis and what you see, what is the likely answer? Even though Biden's not going to answer it, what do you see?
Look, these are all payoffs and bribes and, you know, laundering of money or sort of funnel throughs in an effort to either buy access or buy silence, get money where it needs to be gotten in a way that is, in essence, it's a corrupt practice, right? And so whatever smiley face or explanation you want to put on it, this is dirty stuff.
And it's really interesting coming from Russia because they're not our friends.
For years, we heard claims about President Trump and Russia, and the only money that's gone back and forth and any collusion with Russia has been from Hillary Clinton and the DNC and the vice president's son. You're looking for Russian collusion? Look no further than there.
And this is particularly concerning to me because at least with the Steele dossier and what we saw with Obamagate and that scandal, we have enough information where we can basically piece together what happened. We know the story. We need the official documents, whatever, but we all know what happened with that. We don't know what happened with this money that came from Russia to Hunter Biden. What did he get? What did Russia get for the $3.5 million? That really hasn't surfaced, and the payment really just surfaced recently. So what are your thoughts?
We go back to the fundamentals again of just there has got to be answers for these things, and the fact that everyone kind of shrugs or they let Biden get away with, this has already been asked and answered, I'm not discussing this any further, let's talk about Trump. And everyone goes, okay, and they just kind of
they're obsessed
complicit
with Trump.
Right?
They're just absolutely obsessed with him.
But they can't answer basic questions, and Hunter Biden, is missing in action somewhere.
Yeah, and we also know that his company received $1.5 billion from China.
Right, which is an outrageous, another insane special sweetheart deal where China is going to provide access to him at that level, $1.5 billion for banking services.
And it was a deal with the Bank of China, which, because it's a communist country, a lot of Americans forget that the Bank of China is part of the communist government.
Right. Any Chinese corporation is not a corporation. It's just another arm of either the government or the army. I mean, those are the two entities that control everything. And so in this case, they're buying the vice president's son for $1.5 billion. And we're supposed to believe that there's absolutely no connection or involvement to the vice president. And it happens immediately following a trip where Hunter Biden is on the same plane with the vice president. But there's no connection. This is all just, coincidental, just happened that way. Meanwhile, huge banking firms on Wall Street who would love to have that business, who actually have people with qualifications and experience and degrees and a portfolio of investments that shows that they actually know how to work and manage that kind of money, they get bypassed. But Hunter Biden, he goes to the top of the list.
It's so infuriating, frustrating, not just from a business standpoint, but from a national security standpoint as well. When we come back from the break, we will discuss the Department of Justice and their response to the findings. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are here with Chris Farrell talking about the payments to the Biden family. Just in the last few months, in addition to what we've seen uncovered over the last years, we have enough information on Hunter Biden to indict him. Why haven't we seen an indictment?
It is inexplicable. I don't know what is going on at the Department of Justice other than slow rolling and foot dragging. There's no good explanation why there has not been movement.
In the Senate report that came out a few weeks ago was very clear that Hunter Biden, as we mentioned, has received money from Moscow. He's received money from China. There appears to be sex trafficking, possibly human sex trafficking, drugs involved. There's a lot of damning information in this report. Do you think this has something to do with the election, or what is the delay?
What it usually comes down to in Washington, D.C. is political will. There could be the most damning subject matter and people will refuse to act, or there could be the most frivolous, ethereal.
Like the impeachment.
Correct. So, I mean, here's the disparity. Hunter Biden, there's a lot of material. You could take the Senate report and reformat it, and you could make it an indictment, literally.
With several counts.
And it's sufficient to get in front of a grand jury, and you'll get an indictment. Just reformat the document. Put it in the correct legal form. Just take the language. And you can get an indictment. Nothing happens. FBI and DOJ have been sitting on materials since December. Forensically, they can look at computer hard drives and extract information. No action. Now flip over the other way. When the target is President Trump, you have the same environment, Ukraine. You have a fake, phony whistleblower, who's not a whistleblower at all, Eric Ciarmorelli, an NSC staffer who used to work for Biden. They phony up a piece of paper, they call it a complaint, they send it in. In 2 months, the president is impeached. So the disparity of how things are done in official Washington is breathtaking. If you're one of the insiders, you get a pass and it's dragged out forever, nothing happens. If you're part of the Trump derangement syndrome, 2 months, the president's impeached.
And to your point, we've seen, particularly DOJ, but pretty much most of the executive branch agencies have slow-rolled the request for documents. They're not producing anything that the president has been asking for. And you were talking about political will. President Trump is very willing to prosecute. He's very willing to look into this. But we've seen that slow-rolled.
And here's why. if you look at the voting demographics from the last election, and you look when Washington goes home at night, they go to Montgomery County, Maryland, they go to Arlington, Virginia. Look at how those counties voted. It's like 96% for Hillary Clinton. The rank and file of the Department of Justice, the staff that shows up there and in the building every day, is hard over to the left. They do not reflect the rest of the American population or public. They are the official government who've worked there 20, 30 years, and they're all leftists. Now, is there a conservative minority? Yeah, sure, but they're the minority, and they're not going to obey the president. They're just not going to do it.
Well, we're even seeing attorneys appointed by Attorney General Barr who are working on investigations. John Durham, we're still waiting to see what comes of that, although I have some hope in that investigation. But recently we've seen other investigations just kind of quietly disappear.
Yeah. Official Washington can't stand President Trump. He is the disruptor. He comes in, and they've had their nice little way of doing business for the last 20 or 30 years with increasing incremental victories by the left, by an ever-expanding government, by staff that, the rank. Look, remember Sally Yates, the acting Attorney General? The Department of Justice is filled with an army of Sally Yateses. That's the staff at the Department of Justice.
So if President Trump is reelected, do you have hope that we could actually see some justice done in this case?
I tell you what I'd love to see happen in the Department of Justice. Treat the Department of Justice like the Department of Defense. And the attorneys that are manning all these different positions, they get rotated every 3 years, just like military officers do. And you say, you know what? Hey, listen, Captain so-and-so.
You can't entrench.
And it's time for you to rotate, and you're going to go to a new job. And whether that means moving, or just shifting within the organization, you cannot have this professional bureaucracy that's loaded with political operatives. Treat DOJ attorneys like you treat commissioned officers in the military. Move them around. Force them out of their positions. If they don't like it, you know what they can do? They can resign, just like military officers do.
That's how you do in the military.
But there's got to be a leveling here that does not allow this consolidation of power.
That is a really interesting point. I remain hopeful that we will actually see justice come out of this. We'll see. Obviously, it depends largely on the results of the election. But, sir, thank you so much for your time.
Great to be with you.
Will Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and the other D.C. elite be held accountable for lying about the Russia hoax, selling American power to our adversaries, or trying to remove the President of the United States? The answers depend on the outcome of the election. For this edition of One America News Investigates, I'm Christina Bobb. Thank you for watching, and tune in to One America News Investigates every Saturday and Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Stay informed.
After what was perhaps considered the most consequential presidential election in this country's history, half of the American voters still have no confidence in the accuracy or finality of the results. More profoundly, elected officials, the Department of Justice, and the FBI are neither conducting investigations nor demanding any answers. In fact, the Democrats, their overlords, and the mainstream media disturbing, actually shocking witness testimony of voting errors and irregularities on a scale large enough to put into question the validity and the outcome. But you don't have to just take me at my word. We have eyewitnesses that we'll hear from very shortly. In the meantime, a quick summary of the cases where there are questions. Georgia case of the very unequal double standard for signature verification for in-person ballots versus mail-in ballots. And the Pennsylvania case, which is in front of the Supreme Court as an issue of law. This based on the state's very explicit limits on mail-in voting. And if that isn't enough to meet the threshold of doubt, add to it concerns of software glitches, flipped votes, suspicions in the chain of custody, the double counting, the backdating, the mysterious case of thousands of mail-in ballots without creases or folds. Oh, and the sudden appearance of pristine completed ballots stuffed in.
Election integrity should be one of the highest priorities in our country. We have a republic if we can keep it. If we lose the consent of the governed, then the will of the people is never translated into government. One whistleblower, Jesse Morgan, a truck driver who hauls mail as a contractor, stepped forward to explain what he saw, the problems that he saw, and why it was that he decided to come forward. And it wasn't because of politics. said he didn't even vote. But he said it was because he believes in this country.
This all happened on October 21st, all right? So October 21st, I went into work as
we all have two YouTube channels. Yeah, okay. So my point today for the video it is I try to focus on focus on the song that I want to sing. I'm not sure I can do that. Okay. Okay. I want to sing a Vietnamese song. Okay. Bước xuống phố sáng tinh mơ, dạo qua góc công viên, thấy bao điều người chào bình minh đang đến, nhìn cụ già tập dưỡng sinh, sao trong tâm ta thấy bình yên, một Hà Nội rất thân quen. Từng dòng người vội vã nối những chiếc xe dài lê thế. Đưa em đi qua phố phường bao sắc màu, bao ánh đèn, ngồi ăn một quán ven đường. Hà Nội nhẹ nhàng ấm áp, dịu dàng đậm chất thơ. Một ngày xa, một cảm giác lòng chợt nhớ. Đưa em đi qua phố phường bao sắc màu.
Supervisor, he came down, he's like, hey, how are you? I said, good, how are you? He said, good. He said, I'm transportation supervisor. He said, like, I'm going to need you to take this load out to Lancaster. And I said, well, I was like, why? I was like, that really doesn't make sense. This is what I told him. I was like, this really doesn't make sense. I was like, why would I take it back to Lancaster? I was like, 95% of this load is all for you. I was like, it would make more sense to leave the trailer here in this yard. If it came back the next day, and this is when it's even weirder, so my trailer that I had this trailer for the past month, 10R 1440, it's not there. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, where's my trailer at? You know, like, the trailer's gone. I want you to talk to someone about the situation that you had, all right? And I said, okay. And I talked to them, and I told them everything I just told you. I didn't care who really won the election, but like standing there, I think the voting, the election, our vote, like that's the one thing of us Americans that we have. And if you're going to start corrupting that, taking that away from us as Americans, we deserve to know the truth. We deserve to have an honest, fair election. I sat there and I'm thinking, I'm like, if I go about this, you know, I have everything to lose and nothing to gain on this, man. Already been losing, which I'm not going to get into detail about what have I been losing, what I've lost, but it's been hurtful. I mean, just the day whenever I came out, after I got off of Hannity, at nighttime, I found out my grandma passed away when I was on the show with her. But here I am. I'm still with you guys trying to get this out to the people, out to America. I'm still here fighting for our country because I believe everyone needs to know.